Imagine a philosopher, right? Someone so important that his students would later say that without him, their entire way of thinking would have just crumbled. This is a man who wrote hundreds of books, who basically built the blueprint for an entire way of life, and then, well, according to legend, he died in a fit of laughter. This is the incredible story of Chrysippus.
I mean, that's a pretty startling question, isn't it? To face the ultimate end, not with fear, not with some solemn acceptance, but with pure, unconcerned joy. It honestly seems almost impossible.
And that's the legend we're going to unpack today. Not just the bizarre story of his death, but why that story might just be the perfect summary of his entire philosophy. But to understand how, we really need to go back to the beginning. So, before Chrysippus shows up in the 3rd century BC, the Stoic school, which was founded by Zeno, was powerful for sure, but it was also kind of vulnerable. It had all these big ideas, but they didn't always seem to fit together perfectly, and that left it wide open to attack from rival philosophers.
Okay, so here was the central problem for early Stoicism. On one hand, they taught that virtue is the only true good. Things like your health, your wealth, your reputation, ultimately they're irrelevant to living a good life. But on the other hand, they also admitted that it's pretty natural to prefer health over sickness. So wait a minute, how can these external things be both irrelevant and preferred? This wasn't just some little philosophical puzzle. It was a serious crack in their entire foundation.
And this is where our guy Chrysippus comes in. Now, he wasn't the founder of Stoicism, but he absolutely became its most important architect. He saw these apparent contradictions not as fatal flaws, but as puzzles that he could solve with some seriously rigorous logic.
And solve them he did. I mean, the man was an absolute intellectual powerhouse. Ancient sources claim he wrote an incredible 705 books. He was so dedicated, they say he would compose his works while walking, just dictating to secretaries who were probably struggling to keep up. You get the sense he was just possessed by this drive to bring order to every single corner of their philosophy.
His contributions were just vast. He developed a system of propositional logic that was so advanced it wouldn't actually be surpassed for almost 2,000 years. He built a coherent model of the physical universe. And most importantly, he solved that ethical puzzle. He argued that while things like health aren't good in the ultimate sense, they are in accordance with nature. And because of that, they're worth selecting. That subtle distinction made the entire philosophy strong and, maybe for the first time, truly defensible.
This is what his followers said about him. And you know what? It's no exaggeration. Without his work shoring up those foundations, Stoicism might have just faded away, like so many other contradictory Greek philosophies. He gave it the intellectual backbone it desperately needed to survive for centuries. In a way, he saved Stoicism from itself.
And you have to understand, for Chrysippus, this was not just some academic game. Logic was a tool for liberation. He believed that if you can think clearly, if you can really, truly separate what you can control from what you can't, then you have a foundation that nothing can shake. You can't be enslaved by fear or desire, because you understand what they really are.
But here's the thing. Chrysippus wasn't just a brain in a jar. He practiced what he preached. For a man who built such a complex, massive intellectual system, his personal life was a masterclass in simplicity.
And that's the great paradox of the man, isn't it? He produced this immense volume of incredibly complex thought, but he lived a life that was stripped of all complexity. He owned almost nothing, lived in poverty completely by choice, because he understood that the entire point of philosophy was to achieve freedom from the tyranny of wanting more. Which brings us all the way back to his death. Now that we understand the man, his focus on logic, his belief in freedom from disturbance, his incredibly simple life, the strange story of his end starts to make a whole different kind of sense. So, according to the legend, he saw a donkey stubbornly eating figs that had fallen on the ground. Then an old woman, its owner, tried to get it to move by giving it some undiluted wine. The sheer absurdity of the scene, this human so concerned with an animal's pleasure, it just struck him as so profoundly hilarious that he was seized by a fit of laughter so intense that he died. And that's really the key takeaway here. It sounds bizarre to us, I get it. But for a Stoic, what could possibly be a better death? To face the end not with terror or regret, but in a moment of pure, unattached amusement at the strange comedy of life. It's the final demonstration that nothing external, not even death itself, could disturb his peace. The story of Chrysippus really leaves us with a profound challenge. He believed that logic, clear thinking, could lead to this unshakable inner freedom, a freedom so complete it could find humor at the very end of life. So it makes you wonder, what truth about the world would be powerful enough to let you do the same?